In this video, we're going to look at neurocommunication. It's important to understand that learning how the mechanisms by which neurons communicate with each other and neurons communicate with other cells is going to help you to understand the basis for a number of physiological processes, including how neurons send action potentials or neural impulses, how muscles send muscle impulses in order to get a muscle to contract. And understanding this will help you to understand a number of other mechanisms by which pharmacology or drugs affect the body. For example, we're going to look at how lidocaine works as a topical anesthetic. We're going to look at how epidurals work, how caffeine and cocaine affect the brain. We'll look at how, for example, you're walking in the park, you get shot by a dart from this person right here, and this dart contains curare, and it causes your muscles to undergo paralysis. Well, how does curare work? How do the drugs that are treating depression actually work? Understanding the mechanism by which neurons communicate, muscles contract, is going to help you to understand this, as well as a variety of other things, such as you're out on a date and you have pufferfish, and the pufferfish has tetrodotoxin, which is a powerful neurotoxin and can cause paralysis of the muscles. Well, how does that work? If you get a shot of Botox to reduce wrinkles, how does that work? Understanding disorders such as myasthenia gravis and the lack of muscle control. Understanding how the neurons connect with other cells, which in this case is showing a muscle cell, and how neurotransmitters get released onto those receptors and how they affect those receptors is what we're going to be focusing on. And understanding this is going to help you to really understand the human body, as well as, for example, nerve gas, like sarin. How does sarin work? So this is going to be an exciting time to learn physiology. Looking at neurocommunication. Well, this requires neurons to be able to conduct information in two ways. One, they need to conduct information from one end of the neuron to the other end, and this is accomplished by an action potential. We're going to see this is a movement of sodium and potassium through the membrane to give you an action potential. And then once this action potential reaches the very end of the neuron and it's affecting the other cell, it could be another neuron, it could be a gland cell, it could be a muscle cell, then you're going to see that there are neurotransmitters that get released. So here's a neuron. This is releasing neurotransmitters that go across a space called a synapse. They bind to a receptor on the cell membrane that the neuron is innervating. And then that's going to cause these receptors to open, ions to come through, for example, sodium to come through, and start an action potential along that second cell. So when we're looking at neurocommunication, you want to make sure that you understand that these two ways for neurons to communicate include one, from sending a signal from one end of the neuron to the other end of the neuron, accomplished by an action potential. Two, it needs to send information across the minute space known as a synapse, which separates one neuron from another or another cell. And this is accomplished chemically by neurotransmitters, as we see here. In the next few videos, we're going to focus on action potentials. And then later on, we'll look at how neurotransmitters work. Well, an action potential depends on two features of the plasma membrane. These two features include a resting membrane potential and the presence of ion channels. A resting membrane potential is just a separation of charges we're going to see along the membrane of a particular cell. Ion channels allow ions to go through from one side of the membrane to the other side of the membrane, and both of these are required for action potentials. When we look at an action potential, as I said earlier, an action potential is a movement of two ions. We're going to have sodium that moves into the neuron or muscle cell, or a cell that can send an action potential. Sodium moves in, and then potassium moves out. And this is going to change the resting membrane potential of that neuron and muscle cell. Make sure you make a note of that. Sodium ions move in, potassium ions move out. That form an action potential. And to get this action potential going here, look at this. Here's another cell, like a neuron, releasing neurotransmitters that come across, stimulating that cell membrane to generate an action potential that goes down that membrane to the next cell. We're going to see that in neurons, we're going to find them in muscle cells. Lots to learn in the coming up videos. Let's test your knowledge on neurocommunication. Pause your video and answer these two questions. Here are the answers. And that concludes this video, and be sure to let me know if you have any questions.